Welcome to the EchoCast, episode 90. Damn. Thank you very much for checking this show out. If you're still listening, it's very much appreciated. Today, we're going to do a State of the Game recap, the last one of the year, apparently. We'll talk about some other gaming stuff that happened this week, talk about a Division 2 topic that's going out on the socials, some listener questions, some content updates, and then we will move on from there. If you would like to support this podcast and my other content, please check out patreon.com/theechocast. Thank you to our Patreon supporters for this month: Hassan, Christian, Darren, Justin, Joe, Tim, PK, and DJ. Just as a heads up, I am currently doing a Division 2 Tommy the Teddy Bear plush giveaway. You can check out how to enter on my Twitter, which is @BonDiesel. Okay, so I didn't explain it before, but this is a podcast about the Division franchise, specifically the Division 2, things going on in the community with the game, news, speculation, all kinds of stuff. Today we are going to kick it off with the news recap for this week, which is basically just the state of the game. So we had State of the Game 141 today. We had Hamish and we had Drew Reckner back. He was on last week. We had no Yannick this week though. So if you want to see your Yannick this week, then jump in the game and find the beard. The main topic of discussion was the 6.1 release, which happened on Tuesday. They did kind of talk about it took a lot longer than they expected. It went on for about 8 or 9 hours or something. They identified some issues that needed to be fixed during the maintenance, and they fixed them, and now we have the update. They acknowledge that there's still bugs and stuff going on. They encourage people to report them. It seems like they do prefer the forums, even though I know they have people watching Twitter and even the subreddit. And even though they've said that it's fine to use those avenues, I would still personally highly suggest going to the forums. It just makes more sense. A lot of the feedback on the subreddit and on Twitter ends up turning into non-game related discussion, for better or worse. I did see a lot of commentary too about how this patch and even current conversation isn't really including PvP. It's kind of par for the course for this game. Again, I respect the people who want this game to be their PvP fix. I think that you're barking up the wrong tree, but I do hope that at some point they address those issues and can try to find those people some type of balance in the game that's enjoyable. But for now, we don't really have any info on that. So they talked a bit about hardcore. They said they are open to suggestions about it. They even mentioned some people suggesting that they use some existing mechanics, such as the water and food collection that you can do in the game. In the regular game, you use it for supply to supply control points, but maybe there'd be another use in the hardcore version of the game. Drew also did confirm that any cosmetics you unlock in the game, in the hardcore version of the game, will carry over. So I know there's like a YOLO hat that you can get that is on your other characters. Once you unlock it, all you have to do is hit level 2. And they haven't really stated exactly what else is there. They kind of vaguely mentioned there's some commendations, I think, that are hardcore specific, but you kind of, I guess you unlock them as you play. So I assume like hitting level 30 and some other things maybe give you a little arm patch, but I haven't really looked into it, but I suspect that's going to be a thing. They did clarify that the Slayer named weapon, which is the Tommy gun that shoots grenade style snowballs, is found on the Hoarder NPCs, and that no, it is not meant to be a meta gun, and it's supposed to be for fun. I've seen topics popping up on Reddit already calling for the game to be buffed or for the gun to be buffed, and just don't. It's meant to be a funny collectible. It is not meant to be the end all be all meta gun. Now, I have seen some other discussions about having like a special like time limited conflict mode where the only gun you can use is the Slayer, and that would be kind of funny. I would be more down for that. But yeah, no, come on. Let's get real. They did do something kind of interesting at the end. They dropped some kind of preview screenshots and information about changes happening in the future. And from what it sounded like, they're not talking the future as in like episode 3, title update 7. They're talking about beyond that. And the big change they showed was basically an entire new gear UI. And what this gear UI does is it shows you. Wow, I had a little yawn there, sorry. It shows you where your rolls on your gear fall in the possible range that they can fall in. On top of that, the biggest news I think they dropped is that when this system gets implemented, they're getting rid of the RNG kind of stat budget that is currently being used in the game. So right now, if you pick up a chest that has like 4 attributes and it has like a maxed out armor drop, those other attributes are all going to be awful. And that's because this new, this RNG system currently is set up so, if one thing is really good on the gear, then the other things aren't as good, so there's some type of balance. I get what they were doing with that. There's a lot of things with Division 2 that, even things I didn't like, and that obviously other people don't like, that like I look at it and I'm like, I get what you're trying to do here, and I'm sure it was cool internally and on the idea board, but when things hit the road, when things hit the real people, it doesn't always work out that way. So I think it's kind of a bummer it's going to take this long, or it's going to take even longer to see a change like this, which I think is really going to make a lot of people happy. It also seems like it's going to simplify things a bit, because I do think the gear game is kind of needlessly overcomplicated for the majority of people right now. It's cool to see that they're willing to do changes this big now. Unfortunately, that probably means that we're going to see another big change in gear, which may lead to a lot of people needing to redo their builds a bit. I know that really just drives some people crazy. I kind of don't get it. If you are playing this type of game, I understand investing in a build and being upset when it's messed up, but that's also kind of the whole point of the game. And especially if it's improving the game in general, these type of changes are not only necessary, but shouldn't, they're gonna happen, and they should happen, even if it miffs some people. My thoughts on the whole state of the game in general: I thought it was another good one. This was nice to have a dev on talking about some things, some good info and some honest answers. I think more than anything, the hint of this future work was really exciting. But what's really fun is seeing, you can just tell Drew, you can tell they're cooking something up, right? You can tell that there's a lot coming, and you can tell that he's just bursting at the seams to talk about it, but they can't. So hopefully that's a hint to what's coming in 2020 on both of these streams, as well as on Twitter and stuff with all the devs and ETF members. There seems like there's a lot of hype, and even in my own Discord, I've seen it from some people in the know, that a borderline frustration with the game currently because of what they know is coming. I don't know what that means, unfortunately or fortunately. All of the people in the know who I talk to fairly regularly are very good about their NDAs and stuff, and don't give me any little hints of information, which is fine. I can wait. But it is fun to see some genuine hype from the people who know what's coming. I know that the whole ETF thing, there's a lot of people who think it's a big shill program. I get that it kind of is, whether people like it or not, simply because it's bringing gamers in and giving them special treatment. But if you've heard people talk about how the actual ETFs work out, that they aren't these like fun little vacations that you basically play dev for a week and it's not fun. It's really hard work, from the impression I'm under. Again, I get it. Unfortunately, some people are just predisposed to negativity, and and they've, for whatever reason, everything's a conspiracy and everything is, got some ulterior motive. But at least from my experience with this franchise, since I got involved since basically the beginning, I've seen updates upcoming and come out where the CMs and the devs and the people in the know are kind of like, oh yeah, cool, yay, this is here now. And then I've seen other updates where they're like, no, seriously, this is freaking awesome. And it tended to be correct. So I'm hyped. I hope you are too. I'm kind of bummed that I was really hoping at the very end of this day of the game we were going to get some type of trailer or teaser for episode 3. I still think it'd be a really good idea to do that sometime between now and the next day of the game, which they announce is January 8th. But at the very least, that January 8th needs to be an episode 3 announcement. It needs to be like, okay, here's what's coming. If there is a lot of narrative heavy stuff in episode 3, which I assume there's going to be, I obviously don't want that spoiled. I think that's, don't do that like they have before. But if it is narrative heavy and just the simple nostalgia of going back to NYC, there's plenty of ways they can get everyone excited without dropping all of the info. But when it comes to mechanics and game modes and stuff like that, people need to know what's coming. I really think episode 3 is very make or break for this game. I think there's going to be a year or two no matter what. People speculating that that's not going to happen. That's silly. When they budgeted this game 3-4 years ago or more, Division 2, they anticipated at least 2 years of content, I assume. I'm guessing 3. And what they do is they budget that up front. And then they know what they're working with as the game comes out and as it continues to live on. So my guess is that this game probably sold well enough to pay itself off and probably all of its content already. And now they just want to try and make more and more profit off of it, so it's a viable product, which is how business works. So I'm really excited. I really think episode 3 is very crucial for this game in the way it's received and what it contains. I'm glad it seems like they're excited about it. What I will say is also really cool is they talked a lot about how like these UI changes are coming in an unannounced update. So we know it's not episode 3, which is also going to be title update 7, which is really nice to know because that means that there's probably a title update 8. And my guess is that title update 8 is probably going to be year 2, episode 1. But maybe not. Maybe they'll do an update in between. Who knows? But I think there's some good stuff coming. I just wish we knew more of what it was. But I guess good things come to those who wait. Okay, so in some other gaming news this week, there's a lot of talk about the next generation of consoles and the power they're going to be putting out. We really haven't gotten any exacts on the actual comparison to PC hardware. I think it's basically known at this point that the PS5 and the Xbox Scarlet are probably going to be basically the same. My guess is they're going to use essentially the same AMD processor. I want to say it's the current the next gen or the new gen AMD processors that just released a few months ago. Obviously by next winter they'll be a year and a half-ish old, which really isn't that bad, especially considering how incredibly powerful a lot of them are. And I think I don't know the exact one that they're saying this is going to be in the PlayStation and Xbox, but I believe it's one of the ones on the upper end. And when it comes to RAM, I think they're I want to say they're saying 12 to 16 gigs of RAM. I think it's 16 total. I want to say it's 4 operating system, 12 for games. And the big thing for both is they're going to have solid state drives, which for anyone who has a PS4 who's replaced their hard drive with a solid state, or even anyone who's using the USB 3 connection on the Xbox to a solid state drive, you know how much that improves your load times and stuff. And it seems like both PS5 and Scarlet are going to have some proprietary SSD or solid state systems that they're, I assume, both going to claim it loads games faster than the other. So I'm super excited for it. I've said quite a bit that I think this next generation of consoles is going to be the closest power-wise that the consoles have ever been on release to like the average PC. I'm sure, you know, Linus Tech Tips and all these guys are, you know, they're going to come out, they're going to tear them down and look at the hardware and be like, well, we could make this for $400 if we go on Craigslist and find, you know, a deal, you know. But I think for the average person, this is going to be really good, especially because I'm suspecting both systems are going to allow people to use keyboard and mouse a lot more than they currently do. And I think that that's going to end up making things a little different when you talk about games like Call of Duty, even games like Division and stuff like that. The extra little detail that seems to have been like sort of confirmed is that Xbox is going to release a digital only system as well. And what's interesting is that the power is actually expected to be a bit less than the current Xbox One X. And so my theory has been for a while that they're going to continue to maybe even produce and sell the One X. So you'll have this digital only, that's like the baseline model that can play all the quote unquote new stuff. You'll have the One X, which is a little bit more powerful, but also has a disk drive if you want that. And then you'll have the Scarlet, whatever they're going to call it. And it's going to be the big daddy. I believe that, you know, from teraflops, quote unquote, I believe it's supposed to be 3 or 4 times more powerful than the One X, which, I mean, the One X isn't like a powerhouse, let's be honest. It is better than the original Xbox One, but, you know, it's still, you know, it struggles to do, you know, 30 FPS, 4K, quote unquote. In case you don't know, the 4K games on Xbox, you know, like even Division 2 and stuff, they're technically 4K, but they typically are being, you know, they're using some tricks to get 4K, and they have a lot of the little special features turned off. And hopefully, if these new gen systems are powerful, as powerful as they say, that won't be the case. Now, they're already promising like 8K games. I'm gonna be straight up, I'm not gonna own an 8K monitor, maybe ever, but definitely not anytime soon. So I really hope they focus more on like 1440p, like 2K or 4K, 60 FPS, or maybe more. That should really, I mean, I think the base standard for the next gen needs to be 2K, 60 FPS solid. I don't know why 1440p is such a neglected resolution. For most people, it's more than, I know on my PC gaming, I only shoot for 1440p and 60 FPS. That's my goal, and my current setup should be able to do that for the next like 5 to 10 years. Probably being a little hopeful with the 10 years, but yeah, so, you know, try to get past some of that silly stuff. But I'm excited. I think 2020 is gonna be fun for games. You've got Cyberpunk coming out, there's a whole bunch of games coming out as this generation kind of ends, and then we're gonna have, you know, the next big step generation wise at the end of the year, and you're talking about games like Halo Infinite and hopefully a bunch of other cool exclusives for Sony and Microsoft coming out. Yeah, so the Game Awards are coming up. Jeff Keighley, I actually really enjoyed watching these last year. It was the first year I'd watched them. I'd heard that in the past they were a bit cringy, but honestly I thought that they were really fun to watch last year. They're a little silly, but no more or less than any of the other award shows. So I'm excited to watch it. I'm probably not going to stream it. I may even not be able to watch it live. But the big debate that's been going on is talking about what should be Game of the Year. It seems like most people are leaning towards Death Stranding. I'm not a PlayStation gamer, so I haven't gotten to play it. That's fine. It seems like it pushed boundaries, even if everyone didn't like it. Another one, kind of a dark horse candidate, I think is Control. It's actually not a game I've played, but I've watched a lot of it and I've read a lot about it, just because it seems like the way the game was made was kind of unique. Personally, I would actually say, like, for me, of all the games I played this year, the one that made the biggest impact on me was actually The Outer Worlds, which I believe is nominated but is not going to win. So, which is fine. It was a little short. It was a little not expansive enough to, it didn't push any boundaries really. But it was just a really tight, solid game. And I really hope, and I assume we're going to get an Outer Worlds 2 on the next gen systems, I'm sure, in 2 or 3 years. And if they can really pump some development into that and expand it and make it interesting, I mean, the characters are just so fun. Like Parvati might be one of my favorite characters I've played with in a game, maybe ever, as like a companion. So, it's the game of the year for me is Outer Worlds. Obviously, as much as I'd love to say Division 2, Division 2 is almost everything I've wanted. Obviously, I would love a lot more than what we've gotten. I think in the long run, it's gonna be one of my favorite games ever, just like Division 1 was. But when it comes to like a sit down and enjoy it experience, Outer Worlds just really knocked it out of the world, if you know what I mean. And then the last little bit of news, I am so sorry. The last bit of news this week is that we found out there is a new BioShock coming. So 2K has opened a new studio, opened, quote unquote. It's been around. It sounds like this new BioShock has actually been in development for a few years. And there's a new one coming. So if you've never played the original ones, I think they still would hold up really well. I really enjoyed BioShock 1. Didn't care for 2 as much. And Infinite, I know a lot of people dogged it because they said it was just a shooter. It just got generic. And that's not false. But man, it was such a pretty game. And I really enjoy the way the stories are so crazy and just have so many twists and rolls and turns. And a new BioShock would be great. We've been underwater, we've been in the air, so I am kind of curious to where they're gonna set this one. I suspect it's gonna be in like a big bunker or something, maybe like a city, like on the ground. But that seems like a little too boring for BioShock, so we'll have to wait and see. And you know what else we're gonna have to wait for? We're gonna have to wait for this 30-second mid-roll. We'll be right back. Okay, so we'll hit some community topics, do some listener questions, a couple content updates, and we're gonna wrap this baby up. So the main community topic I saw this week was actually talking about the hardcore mode. It seems like most of the feedback is really positive. It's something people wanted. It's something different. At the end of the day, I've speculated that I think they basically put this out knowing it's something people would like, and to kind of make up for what has been a kind of lacking episode 1 and 2 content. Even in the State of the Game 141, they talked about how they could have waited to give us this in its finished form, which is probably a year away, is my guess. They didn't say that. I'm speculating. So I'm glad we've gotten to see it in an early state. Unfortunately, people aren't very good at recognizing that this is a beta, and I can tell some of the feedback has been very presumptive, or assuming this is like the final version of what we're getting. It's obviously not. If anything, it seems like the bare bones version of what this is meant to be. But it seems like for the most part, people are enjoying it for what it is. What it is. Most of the negativity I've seen has mostly been along the lines of like, this was a waste of development time and blah blah blah. That's fine if that's how you feel. I don't think that's a very good take, if you want me to be totally honest. I think it's they even said this was kind of a side project for a lot of the devs. I suspect these are people working on other big parts of the game, probably stuff we don't even know about, who decided to kind of put this together on the side. I'm under the impression, and I hope I'm not going to get in any trouble for saying this, I'm under the impression this is kind of how survival started in Division 1. I'm not really under the impression survival was meant to be a thing, really. It just kind of came from like, hey, what if we did this? And then it turned into what survival was. And I think that's actually how hardcore is going. And I have this kind of little, I have this little feeling in my gut that eventually hardcore may end up turning into a thing that ends up being the main thing that people like about the Division. It may even turn into like a, a Division 3 is essentially a hardcore version of the game, probably with some changes. For me, one thing I would kind of like, and this is basically probably going to annoy a lot of people who like it, but I really like the idea, and I think I mentioned it last week, of if you died, say you were level 5 and you had gotten a bunch of gear that you were working really well with, because you have to be much more selective of your gear now. It's not just everything you pick up you put on, because especially as you get up, you're going to be able to kind of specialize your builds, and you may actually hold on to gear a bit longer. But if you say you died at level 5, you lose everything you have, all the gear, all the guns, attachments, maybe not attachments, I don't know. With the way the current system is, that might not work, but like gear mods and stuff like that. And you respawn at level 5 with like this like gray crappy gear that is like base minimum level 5 gear. So now you gotta go back out and get good gear. I don't really know if that would fully satisfy most people. I think that I'm basically thinking of like kind of like an Escape from Tarkov type of deal. I've been playing a bit of that lately. I've seen a lot of people talking about it, so maybe I'm a bit obsessed with it. But I think it's definitely something that would be a really cool idea. I have already seen some people on in the community showing how there's people that are hitting level 30 before they even get out of that initial like dock area from opening apparel caches. I think it takes like, I don't know, it takes some absurd number of them. I mean, if that's your prerogative, I would like if they would patch that out, because that just seems like it's not in the spirit of what they are building this mode for. But if I've learned anything from gaming in general, but especially the Division over the last 3-4 years, is that if you put it out, they will find a way to break it and to abuse it and to do it the way that you did not want them to do it. So it is what it is. I think it's a cool mode. I'm excited to see what happens to it. I hope this is kind of like a long-term project. Maybe it was something meant for like a year 3, and that they're showing us now, and it's going to develop, and then we'll see a final form like at the end of year 2 or at the beginning of a year 3. We'll have to wait and see. No need to presume too early. Okay, so we have some listener questions from Ginger Murdo on Discord. We have 5 questions, so bear with me here. The first one, does people exploiting glitches in the game piss you off? For example, the one being used to level up quickly in hardcore, and to get gear for their non-hardcore agent, or are you happy to just do your own thing? I mean, it's kind of a mix. Like I just said, I mean, the thing I've learned about this game and this community, in all games, in all communities, is that if there's a way for people to break things and abuse things and exploit things, they're going to do it. One thing I've always kind of wished with the Division is that I've always kind of wished that they'd be much more ban hammery about this type of thing. There's a lot of exploits that people have done where there's no like mistakenly doing it, where oh whoops, I accidentally leveled my hardcore character to 30. Like, it's not, I really wish that when there were these opportunities, I understand that there's probably a point of view of like, well, they put it in, so I should be allowed to do it, and if they don't fix it fast enough, that's not my fault. But that's kind of like, I like going 105 miles an hour in a 45 zone. If they didn't want me to go 105, then I don't know, my car couldn't go 105. I don't know, that's a terrible comparison, but I think I wish that they would just ban people more, or make examples, or take away someone's all their gear. Like, that's always been something I've wanted to see, is that when people abuse things to get gear and level up and to do those type of exploits, I've always wished that they wouldn't even delete their character necessarily. I just wish they'd wipe their entire everything from their their character, or just wipe them down to 0, or wipe them, wipe that character off their account. Be like, nope, sorry, you used it to exploit. You can start over again if you want. I guess then they would just exploit back to 30, but I don't know. So it does piss me off. But at this point, I just expect it. Okay, second question. What do you think year 2 will have for Division 2? We know there's no survival coming, but I think they'll have to think up something really fresh to maintain interest. Please not Battle Royale. Yeah, I don't know. I've talked about this before. I'm not really creative enough. I think there's kind of a consensus that people want just replayable content, and so since we know we're not getting like a direct survival or underground sequel, I think that they'll have to fill that role some other way, which I think they can. People have really almost fetishized survival and underground. It's almost like a lot of people think that if those two things don't come out, then the game just doesn't have a chance. And I just have more faith in the developers of the game. I think that they can learn lessons from those two modes, which were both very much less than perfect, had lots of their own issues. I think they can take lessons from both of those and apply them to the game and other modes and provide us some really cool content that we can really enjoy. So I don't know what that is exactly. I'm curious myself. Like I said before about episode 3, how important episode 3 is. I think what's just as important is that with year 2, when they announce it, we can't just get some vague year 2, 3 episodes with new areas to play and new game modes. They can't do that again, because with year 1 it's been a disaster. Even now we actually don't know what year 3 is, or what episode 3 is. All we know is it's in New York City and we're hunting Keener. Essentially that's all we know. We don't know what type of, if it's going to be narrative. We don't know if it's going to be some type of replayable mode. We don't know anything about it. And they've always kind of played it off like it's fun if it's a mystery. But I don't like that personally. The same way as I don't like how they're treating Kinley College like it's some exclusive fun mode to play and it's only around for a week at a time. Kinley College kind of sucks, and treating it like it's some exclusive thing to do is kind of lame. And honestly, I don't know, it's borderline insulting. I hate it. I really don't like it. It should just be available. It should just be open, so that people can play it whenever they feel like. Because honestly, I mean this in the nicest, kindest way to the people who built and made Kinley College, and did it. But they should be thanking anyone who goes in there and plays that, and not kind of disrespecting people who want to play it by only allowing it to be around limited time. So I don't know exactly what they're going to bring out for year 2, but it needs to be good, which is the most annoying thing to say ever to a game dev. But it also needs to be very transparent. I don't need to know the details of every bit of the story. You can hide all of the important stuff that you need to hide about content, but you can still inform people about what's coming. Because I'm telling you, if they do a year 2 and it's some vague, mysterious bullcrap the way year 1 has been, which maybe now we know why they were so vague about it, because it wasn't very good, at least episode 1 and 2. If they do that again with year 2, people are not going to buy in, because I think year 2 is going to be paid. Even if it's only 20 or 30 bucks, you aren't going to convince people to do it unless you give them a good reason to do it. Your third question is, how long before cross-play games becomes the norm? It's been proved to work with Modern Warfare, Rocket League, so why not make it more mainstream? I think it'll be something that's more PS5 Scarlet, and they're treading the waters with it now. Yeah, I think you're right. I think that they've kind of proven through Activision and through some other games, specifically with Call of Duty, as well as a few others, that it's a good system. I think the biggest complication is how they accomplish it. So, with the Division, the way you would have to do it is everyone who would log in, when you play Division 2, you would actually log into your Uplay account. and you would use that username in game. That's how Activision does it with Call of Duty. And I actually suspect on the game side of things, it's probably not that difficult to make this work. But on the like account management side of things, like what are you gonna do with people who have multiple, who have a PC and an Xbox character? Can they merge them, or they have to pick one or the other? But yeah, I mean, I think it's inevitable. I think that we're going to eventually have crossplay with everything. It's good for gamers, and I hope that people keep pushing for it. You said, question 4: the Division movie, good or bad? So it's going to be a straight to Netflix movie, which isn't necessarily a death sentence. There's some movies on there that are great. There's some TV shows that they produce that are great. I think probably good, because the director is the guy who did the second Deadpool, and he did work on I can't think, John Wick movies. And he's done. I really like Deadpool 2. I thought it was great. I like the way that it was, the way it told the story, and the way it was shot and stuff. It was really cool. So it seems like his vision is cool. I think he actually did Hobbs and Shaw as well, which I heard a lot of good things about. I'm not really a Fast and the Furious guy, but supposedly it's pretty good. So it still has the director it was supposed to have anyways. And it supposedly still has its 2 lead stars. And I think as long as they so it's a Jake Gyllenhaal, and the lady from Zero Dark 30. I don't know. You guys can correct me. But I think it looks good. It looks good. We don't know anything about it. I think as long as they keep that core together, it could be really cool. I kind of hope it's like a prequel, where it kind of like it ends with the beginning of the disaster. Maybe it even follows Keener going back on the Shade Agency and kind of turning. I suspect it's going to be kind of like a hunting Chernenko, or really more going after the people who actually spread it. And as things were kind of going down the tubes, I suspect it's going to involve showing the disaster happening. It could be something that happens like in the Division 2 timeline. My biggest fear is that it's just gonna be something that says Division on it, and it's gonna be something completely different. So I'll say good until I have a reason to say bad. And then the final thing here: what are your thoughts on the possible new Splinter Cell in the works? So I've actually never played a Splinter Cell game. I bought one on backwards compatibility and played a bit. It was cool. I liked it a lot. I think it was Blacklist. I'm pretty sure. And it seemed fun. It blows my mind that we went a whole generation without a Splinter Cell game. It seems like if one comes out, it's not going to be until next gen. It's such a big franchise. It's just weird. So cool. I'm not going to complain. It's not exactly 100% my type of game, but from what I played, I enjoyed it. And I just fear that, and I hope that after this big change, after Breakpoint came out and it was such a disaster, my biggest fear with Splinter Cell is that we would find out it's coming out in the next like 2 years, and it was going to be just another generic open world crappy Ubisoft like experience. Obviously I like the Division, but what they kind of did to Far Cry, and now what they did to Ghost Recon, I think they would have done the exact same thing to Splinter Cell. But it seems like they've kind of had an awakening. And it, I mean, from the last thing I saw is they literally said that studios now need to pitch, the main office, the games they're making, and if they aren't different enough from everything else that's out, they're just gonna reject it. So I really hope that's a good thing for Splinter Cell. That's a franchise everyone wants to see come back, and I'll be happy to see it come back. Thanks for the questions, Ginger Murdo. If you or anyone else has questions for the next episode, be sure to ask in my Discord and the YouTube comments. I post a opportunity for people to ask on Twitter and my Patreon as well. Okay, so for a couple quick content updates, I do have the giveaway to the Tommy Teddy plush Division 2 official merch. It ends, I believe, on Monday. So check out my Twitter to enter. That is Monday the 16th. My Twitter is @BondDiesel, and there's like 8 different ways you can enter. If you can't tell, I've been sick and life has been a bit crazy, so streams this week didn't go too well. Last week I actually hit all 3 of my streams, I believe, but this week, it's just not happening, and I apologize. My goal is for the new year to get back on a normal schedule. I'm not big on resolutions, so don't see it like that, but definitely see it as me doing my best. I also kind of hope that there's going to be division stuff for me to play. It's kind of a dual hope there. Okay, so let's wrap this thing up. If you want to support the podcast or my other content, please check out my Patreon at patreon.com/theechocast. If you are on iTunes, please rate the podcast and leave a review. Or if you're on any other platform that allows you to rate it and review it, please do. I am on Twitch as BondDiesel, where I try to stream 3 times a week. I am also on Twitter as @BondDiesel, where you can catch my general thoughts on the game, state of the game live tweets, and the occasional foot in my own mouth. Last, if you want some cool The EchoCast or BondDiesel merch, check out bonddiesel.live/merch. And that's all I have. So until next time.